As I'm like sitting down to get ready to record the intro for this episode, it dawns on me that I'm pretty sure this is the first and only Batman book that I've read where somebody is like, yeah, really, kids? You're employing kids? Like, what is wrong with you? And this has been like one of the most overlooked things. I guess there's always been jokes about it, but I mean, does no one really think that like Batman employing kids to do crime fighting work, like there seems like there should be a bigger outcry with that than what there is. Like it's just kind of like, oh yeah, he's Batman, he does what he wants. Like, how do you want me to stop him? I don't know who it is. Welcome to Unbuckled Comics. If you're new, welcome. There's a liability form on the back table next to our class syllabus. It is going to lay out everything you need to know to become a unbuckled sidekick. If you're returning, thank you for your continued support. I am Unbuckled Cape, your host of this comic book review podcast, and today we're going to be taking a look at Batman. We're going to be taking a look at Robin and Batgirl Year One, and this is a thick trade. When I was at the Hershey Comic Con, I actually handed it to Scott Beatty, the writer, and he said, "Oh, you have the phone book." Now, he said that, but it is like comparable to the Long Halloween. It's a little bit smaller than Dark Victory. Like, it's not massive. We are going to try to condense it try as if I didn't already record the review, into one episode so that hopefully, I'm recording this intro Sunday, like Sunday the week that this comes out, and um, Mr. Beatty and I are supposed to have a interview today to give you guys next week. We've been trying to plan this for like 2 months, 3 months, something like that. Regardless, we're already kind of out on patrol, but let's pull the reins back a little bit, and before we get the rest of the way out on patrol, let's gather some intel first. Linktree, linktr.ee/unbuckled comics is where you're going to find everything Unbuckled Comics related, including Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or X, and the YouTube pages. Now, listen, Instagram is the more important one. That's where you want to go for updates and little snippets of the videos. And I do that all by hand, just so you guys know. Like, this isn't like I don't pay for a subscription service to have them take my videos and just snip it themselves. Like, I do that myself. And if you listen to them, you could probably tell the audio quality isn't the best, but it is with the time and space that I have in my current life, it's what you get. All right. Um, as far as X and Facebook go, I basically just push what comes out on Instagram to them. Uh, YouTube, however, is slightly different. Yes, they are mostly the just a still image of the comic that I'm reviewing. There is a YouTube short over there of me getting character lines at the Hershey Comic Con. I do believe I have at least one Mrs. Kate guesses over there. I have another one that I need to get together for. Actually, I think that's 2 weeks from now when we do our case file with Green Goblin. And that'll go over there. So that'll be something that is different on YouTube from everywhere else. And then eventually I'll also push some of the interviews that we have over there. So definitely Instagram and Facebook is where you want to check out. Honestly, guys, I don't, outside of that, have a ton to report. I can open up my book and let you know where we are. I am currently reading Long Halloween for sometime in October. So I will have, after getting that done, I will have October completely filled. I just got in the mail Friday, I believe it was, the IDW Volume 1 of Turtles. So I'm going to actually write that in my book right now. We are going to do a, not sure. I'll have to start reading it. Looking at the size of that hardcover, it's probably going to be a 2 episode deal, but I'll have to decide later. So if it is in fact a 2 episode deal, once I am done with that, we are going to be looking at Godzilla, Here There Be Dragons. That will get us through November. Also, middle of November, I am looking to do a Ask Unbuckled. We did that last year. I had a lot of fun with it. Looking forward to making that a yearly event here at Unbuckled Comics. Just kind of like a yearly cap on what I think went well, what I'm looking for the future, uh, and allowing you guys the chance to ask me all the questions. And we had some zany ones, we had some serious ones. It is a good time. So I am looking forward to doing that again. And then I have a couple of episodes through December already planned and ready to go so that I can enjoy the holiday time with my family. I already have one absolutely planned for January. And then uh, coming out of January, going into that February, March, and April, I'm going to continue to play stuff a little closer to the chest. But yeah, I got a lot of stuff down the road. And to be honest, if I decide that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is a 1 episode deal, I am looking for an episode to fill November, and then one, two, three, four, five, six, going through November all the way to and through January. So if there is any kind of suggestions out there, I know sometimes it's hard to make a suggestion because it's an availability issue for some things, as well as, um, I was looking into the Catwoman one in Rome because that's a tie-in story to the Long Halloween, and like that trade is just absolutely ridiculously expensive, and I have no idea why. Um, but if there's something that you think, maybe I have or maybe you would like to hear about, let me know. I do have plenty of time to get something ordered and in. I do not have a problem doing that, as long as it is a comic that I am at least semi interested in reading. I'm looking at my shelf and I see Something is Killing the Children, Volume 1. That is a book I picked up. I don't remember when we did the episode on that, but that is like a book that I would have never grabbed, but I had no problem. I found it relatively cheap on sale. I think the cover of it is slightly damaged, or maybe they were running a sale. So something like that. Definitely don't mind doing that. Uh, Honestly, if you pick a Batman book, there's a good chance I already have it. I still have a lot of Venom, Daredevil, Deadpool's, um, some Spider-Man, mostly if it's Spider-Man with Venom. So there's some things that we can hit up. There is some modern comics that we haven't talked about. I also have like a really, really big portion of the Morrison JLA run, and we haven't even touched on those yet. But I really like the at least the early part where it's issues 1 through whatever. There's Tower of Babel. I do have some New 52 Justice League. I have some Crisis books. So there's a lot here that we could talk about, but at the moment, I am just kind of like after Turtles, I don't really know what I want to do. I do have the James Bond, the most recent run of James Bond sitting here. We could go a little bit modern. We could talk about separation anxiety. We're probably definitely going to talk about All Winter, and we might do that one in December. That is Dark Knights of Steel All Winter. That is a book that I am, or a series that I was insanely excited for because last year and still up to this point, Dark Knights of Steel might be one of my favorite reads over the last handful of years. So just a bunch of stuff to look at. I do have plans, but I was holding off to the new year to get some of that going. Um, yeah, I mean that's really it. Like I said, I have been reading comics here and there. I am caught up with Daredevil, the current run of that, I have pulled off of my shelf the World's Finest books that I need to catch up with. And then once I'm done with that, I'll probably read the Turtles, Black, White, and Green, and start picking away at some of the mini series. I'm excited to read the Zatanna Bringing Down the House is the name of that one. I'm excited to read that one, and I might do a review for that. Newer comics tend to be a little bit harder to review for me. I feel like they don't do as well because people are either super interested in them or not interested in them. And if you're super interested in them, you don't want any spoilers. And if you're not interested, then you just don't care. Doing some of those older comics seem to do a lot better because people have either read them and have an opinion and they want to compare opinions, or haven't read them and think, oh, there's a good chance I'll never get to this, so I might as well listen to it. The fear of spoilers isn't there as much, um, so yeah. But anyway, let me give way to myself here, and let's jump into the review of Robin and Batgirl Year One. I bought this trade in a mall at Norfolk, Virginia, when my wife, which, then girlfriend, had to live there for 3 months for like training for a job. I went down with her to help her settle in, and we did some exploring around the place that she was in. And actually, I really liked the area she was in, and I loved the comic section at the mall. Batman, yeah, Batgirl, Batgirl slash Robin Year One was one of the books that I grabbed there because I wanted to fill out like the Batman timeline. I didn't expect to go home with one of my favorite comic books to date, and maybe there is a little bit of sentimental value with it because when she spent that 3 months in Virginia, that was also the time that I made the decision to buy a ring. We actually went ring shopping, maybe the same day, or maybe it was when I went back down. So I do have sentimental value to this book, but I don't think that stops it from being one of my favorite comics to date. I don't know where it would rank, but at the end of the review, you're going to find out what I think of it, I guess. Writer is Scott Beatty. He has written Nightwing Year One, Sherlock Holmes Year One, something with the year ones, Batman No Man's Land, huge book, Countdown to Final Crisis. He also collaborated with Chuck Dixon on writing this. Uh, Robin, he has like 111 credits on Robin. Chuck Dixon does, so massive. Nightwing, Detective Comics, The Punisher War Journals, Batman Nightfall, SpongeBob Comics, which I didn't even know was a thing. Our artist, one of them, is Marcos Martin. Worked on Amazing Spider-Man, Green Arrow, Breach, Doctor Strange, The Oath, Daredevil, and then our other artist is Javier uh, Pulido. Amazing Spider-Man, Hawkeye, She-Hulk, Human Target, Catwoman, and The Shade. Okay, so I'm gonna burn through this comic because this is a thicker issue. Actually, when I talked to Scott Beatty at Hershey Comic Con, he referred to it as the phone book, and I do want to get through all of it in one episode. So I'm not gonna dilly dally around. We're gonna burn through it and stop on the talking points that we need. Issue number one, Young Robin thwarts. Spelled that wrong. This is why I don't. This is actually why I like if you are seeing the what I'm saying auto generated. I'm terrible at spelling. All right, I'm wasting time. A young Robin thwarts Mad Hatter who is kidnapped um, young girls and selling them to a foreign president. Gross. It's a dark-ish story that sees Robin kind of go it alone. Uh, and the first thing that you notice in issue one, because I think the first time I read it, I didn't even realize what the story plot was, that Mad Hatter was selling young teenaged girls to some gross president of another country. I think the first thing you realize is it's a mix of Silver Age, like Brave and the Bold art style, coupled with some Tim Sale esque art style. It's unique, and I really, really like it because one, it has, like I said, it doesn't have the Tim Sale like long bat ears, but it just has that cartoony feel to it. The Robin is definitely like Brave and the Bold Robin. Batman is a little more Brave and the Bold mixed with a Cape Crusader Batman. The art is flashy, pops, but the colors aren't overly bright. It does a good job at letting you know that this is a story in the past, and then the storytelling helps that with a bunch of references to some other Batman stories like Killing Joke or Death in the Family, things like that. So it's a balancing act, right? When you take a story and a character, when you take a character like Robin, who's typically a little more geared for kids, typically, and then you put them in this dark story where like they never really say what's going on with the girls, but you know, anyone older than like 12 is probably going to figure out that it's kind of dark and gross. But issue number two, we see Robin take on Two Face with Batman this time, and they lose. Two Face wins in this battle, and Robin almost dies. Robin is arrogant. Two Face catches Batman, which he used Robin to capture him, and then he has Batman and a judge that was overseeing the trial that saw Harvey Dent take the acid in his face, and Robin allows his arrogance to kind of get the better of him, and he plays into Two Face's game, uh, leaving the judge to die and him himself almost dying. I love that these stories are narrated by Alfred. It gives an unbiased opinion on Robin's life as a crime fighter. If this was narrated by Robin, we would have him constantly being like, I have to be better. I can do this. I can do this. I can't let Batman down. If it was narrated by Batman, we would be looking at it from the standpoint of, Robin has to listen to me. He can't try these things on his own. I tried to warn the boy about this, and now everything's on my head. Because Alfred is the narrator in this, it allows us to view the Batman Robin relationship from a third point perspective as we are viewing it, reading the story. So it's kind of like we're sitting next to Alfred watching this happen with him. And he is going on about his disapprovals of Robin's extracurricular or Dick Grayson's extracurricular activities as Robin and the situations that he is put in. Excuse me. After nearly dying in issue number three, Bruce quote unquote fires Robin, and the two of them grow distance and like don't speak anymore. And Dick Grayson goes into kind of a depression. This eventually leads Dick to run away, but not before he stops Freeze's blood bank robbing operation, which kind of still proves that he can do the crime fighting stuff. So Dick just leaves, he leaves a thank you note and off he goes and he's gone. And as he is traveling, he's kind of jumped by this like gang that's a school of ninja clan type thing. Um, all is answered very quickly in issue number four. Dick is taken in by the League of Assassins, and he's like the star pupil. This League of Assassins kind of reminds me of the Hive Academy and the Teen Titans cartoon run by Brother Blood. And also kind of like the Foot Clan from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's run by a guy named Shrike, and he is taking like wayward, troubled youth and training them to be League of Assassins. So they are tasked, all coming full circle here. After doing some test training and exercises of breaking into a building and Robin stopping one of the boys from killing someone, it almost leads him to. He kind of is undercover, but he's kind of not. Um, he definitely still doesn't want to kill. He has his morals, but he is angry and acting rather out of character. He's acting more like a Jason Todd than a Dick Grayson. But when one of the security guards at this museum is about to be killed by one of the fellow boys, Robin stops him, and at the end of the exam, they're saying, "Hey, he didn't kill this guy," and the instructor Shrike actually sides with Robin, saying that you were not instructed to kill anybody. If I want you to kill someone, I will tell you. And immediately leading into, by the way, I want you to kill somebody, and that somebody is Two Face. They are being hired for a hit on Two Face, and I mean, everything goes wrong. Of course it does, right? So they break into Two Face's home, and he kind of knows what's going on, and the boys are picking off guards left and right. Not supposed to kill any of the guards, so they're just, incapacitating them. And when Robin is able to get the other boys to safety after Two Face, kind of pulls a switch on him and springs a trap for them instead. Robin is able to take him down and has a gun pointed to his head, ready to pull the trigger, uh, but he can't. He heads back to the Batcave to warn Batman with a note, and then Batman and Two Face go on this separate search for the League of Assassins. The conclusion of the Robin of the Batman Robin year one comes with Batman and Dick Grayson fighting Shrike, and then other members of the league, and then Two Face breaks in and ends up killing Shrike and flees, and Robin ends up being brought back into the fold with Batman. A shorter, much actually shorter than the Batgirl. The Batgirl is the longer of the two. This was only 4 issues, and Batgirl is 8. Yes, 8. Batgirl is double this. Uh, I enjoy Robin year one. It's it feels, how do I want to say it? It like nostalgic isn't the word, but it feels very familiar. A combination of the art and the writing, it feels right in place with Dark Victory, which is a Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale Batman story where Robin becomes Robin. And I believe there is references. Well, there's definitely references to the Long Halloween, but I think there's also references to Dark Victory in this as well. The Robin character is extremely well written, and Batman is there and involved, but he isn't the focus of the story. The focus is really Alfred's narration and then just Robin in general. Uh, it puts Batman as a figure much rather as a person, if that makes sense. He is in this story more of the idea of what he stands for and represents than the caretaker for Dick Grayson. He makes Robin re-swear an oath of, loyalty, obedience, and all that other stuff. And that is more or less how we see Batman in this. So this is totally and completely a Robin story. The first story with Mad Hatter is my favorite out of the four. I think easily my favorite out of the four. It is Robin going it on his own, and Mad Hatter kidnaps a girl that Robin is kind of sweet on. It, it also sees him going to public school, and the dynamics of being a teenage superhero, or I guess teenage vigilante is the better word. Um, and the balance that he has to go through with all of that. That's what makes that story interesting because it's personal for him. In issue number 2, when they take on Two Face, it becomes personal. And I love how Two Face is such a personal villain for Batman. He and Harvey Dent were friends before the accident, and then somehow Two Face kind of becomes like the Robin villain. We see in this case Dick Grayson with Two Face, and then in A Lonely Place of Dying, we see um, Tim Drake end up taking on Two Face, and like it just feels like those characters end up being the Robin and Two Face characters end up being tied together a lot. And I'm glad that this book continues or aids in that trend, if you will. But after and look, the whole Robin and Batman losing to Two Face is a good beat. Again, it kind of goes back to the Mad Hatter story where even though this art is it looks very kid friendly, the story isn't. I mean, Robin comes very close to dying and it's brutal. It's not death in the family brutal, but brutal enough that the Bucklets aren't going to be reading this story for a very long time. Um, and again, that all goes back to the balance, and we will probably talk more about that next week. So I really like Robin year one, but that is not where this trade shines. This trade shines in Batgirl year one, which is the latter 8 issues of the book. Issue number one is it's a slightly different method of storytelling than what the Robin year one is. This is Batgirl narrating flashbacks as she is fighting Killer Moth. And just in issue one, this doesn't carry through the whole 8 issues. This flashback narration is going on while she is fighting Killer Moth and his goons. And look, anytime I get to see Killer Moth or Firefly or uh, I don't know, like the Condiment King or Polka Dot Man or one of these really obscure Batman villains, yes, I like the Scarecrows, the Killer Crocs, the Penguins, the Mr. Freeze, but Batman has such an extensive road gallery, and I love when we see these sillier characters. So anyway, uh, Batgirl wants to be a detective, but everyone doubts her and cites her height as an issue. So everyone views her as the little girl, right? And she gets tired of it. She knows that she can be a detective. She's top of her class in her martial arts, and her martial arts teacher, he makes fun of her, and her dad says, well, she's not tall enough, and she is just constantly being put down by the men in the society around her, the men in her life, her dad, instructors, all that stuff. And she's ends up getting really frustrated with it. So she ends up doing Batgirl as a kick in the ribs to her dad. And we find this out that so let me backpedal a little bit. Barbara is incredibly smart from the start. So we get this established character with how do I want to say it? We don't really go through her training. This Batgirl year one isn't really following through the training, and I guess the Robin one didn't either. Um, she is smart. They make that apparent very early on by talking about her multitude of educational accolades. She is very talented at fighting. We see that through her dojo um, altercation with her jujitsu instructor or whatever. And then we see her taking on Killer Moth and his goons as this whole backflash narration is going on, and she does well enough to keep herself alive and actually handle the situation again well enough. Issue number two is still kind of in flashback mode where we see Barbara make a bat costume for a police benefit ball. And again, it's just all to spite her dad. But before she gets a chance to, walk up to her dad and be like, hey, look at my costume, just to irritate him, that's when Killer Moth jumps in and he is trying to kidnap Bruce Wayne. Uh, as the fight goes on, we see Babs struggle to stay one step ahead of Mothman, who ends up escaping, inevitably leaving Barbara face to face with the dynamic duo. Um, and funny enough, issue three, Killer Moth dubs her Batgirl, and She absolutely hates it, which is really funny. You know, Robin picks his name because of something that his parents say. The colors are from, Flying Grace and stuff, or from the circus. I think Nightwing uses the Flying Grayson colors. Anyway, Batman picks Batman because a bat crashes through the window, and Barbara, who is not wanted in any capacity of dealing with crime, detective or vigilante, a criminal, picks her name, and she states that she absolutely hates Batgirl because she's tired of people looking at her as a little girl. She would much prefer Batwoman. Just the the clever little things that these books throw in make the reading really enjoyable. Because in all honesty, the beginning of the story isn't all too interesting. It's actually post issue 3 is where things get really interesting. But to finish up issue 3, after the police banquet ball, Gordon comes home and is kind of like talking to her about why she didn't make it there, and he ends up looking out her window where there's a trellis and roses, and he pulls off a piece of cloth that was torn when she snuck back into the house. And so now her dad is kind of onto her. Uh, Again, in issue 3, we just see Barbara taking on small timers, thieves in a grocery store and things like that. And somehow, um, she thinks that jumping from a building will prove that she belongs out there with Batman and Robin. I don't really quite get that logic, especially coming from someone like Barbara who is so intelligent. But really, what is really, really established in issue number 3 is how crime fighting is this an adrenaline rush that now that she's done it, she can't get enough of it. It's an addictive drug to her, and that makes this story quite a bit more interesting in my mind because now we see that she is clearly in over her head with the killer moth situation. She does enough, good enough with the small timers, but she wants bigger, better things, or bigger, worse things, I guess, and decides that she is going to jump from a building. And thankfully for her, Batman and Robin are tailing her. In issue number 4, Batman and Robin save Barbara from this dangerous jump that actually probably would have killed her, even though she thinks otherwise. Uh, the high tensile strength of the line that she was using would have pulled her arms from her socket or snapped her wrist, and then leaving her to fall to her death. Um, they end up gassing her and taking her back to the cave, where she goes through a literal shooting gallery test and fails the test because at the very end she uses deadly force, uh, which is an instant fail because it's Batman and Robin and he can't use deadly force. But Robin seems to be, soft on her and recognizes her for what she's doing, great skills, her red hair, her freckles on her nose, and they end up gassing her to take her home. They undress her, put her in her car outside of her house, and she wakes up freaking out that, like, oh my gosh, they knew who I am. But Robin makes this chuckle about, Batman being the world's greatest detective, but he didn't even need to unmask her because he would recognize the commissioner's daughter anywhere, which is pretty funny. I actually do think in this Batgirl, and these are Batgirl stories. Robin is the biggest supporting character in these stories, but he is more enjoyable, I think, in this than he is the Robin story. And I think that's just because instead of having him going through the hardship that you need to have a Robin centric story, he gets to be the fun supporting character. And that's where this character really excels, especially with the writing that these two writers have done on it. Uh, Opposite of Robin, Batman is very cold and very cold and distant, which is probably one of my favorite parts of the whole Batgirl 8 issues is that Batman is cold and distant. We don't see Batman as we see him when we are sitting down and reading a Long Halloween or a Red Hood or Batman and Son. We are seeing Batman from Barbara's point of view, where he does not want this girl to take on the crime fighting role. but eventually sees it as inevitable. And when he sees it as inevitable, he decides to start helping her so that she doesn't end up getting herself killed. Um, Eventually, he does also see that she is fit for the job, but we'll get there. Issue number 5. Um, we go back to my second favorite bug boy, Killer Moth, and the introduction of my favorite bug boy, Firefly, who is one sick puppy. Moth is so far down on his luck. He has no gang anymore, no car. His hideout has been foreclosed. And enter Garfield Linz, who Moth is crying the blues to at a bar, where Linz is fresh off of a movie set stunt. He is a not stunt, special effects. That's the word I'm looking for. He's a movie special effects guys that is a pyromaniac, and he puts too much gasoline in an effect, and it burns the movie's star and ruins the movie. And as they are arguing about it, Lynn's asks for the footage. Again, the first time I read it, maybe even the second time I read this book, I didn't catch how like twisted some of this is. For a guy to light someone on fire and then be like, "Do you have the footage? What are you going to do with it?" And then everyone in the room freaking out, like, "Oh my God, you want it? That's terrible. Get out and, throw them out and whatever." Um, but of course, the two team up and Lynn's, Lyns, Garfield Lynn's, quickly becomes too insane to control. His fire fetish is just out of control. Issue number 6, the bugs made a few enemies, burning some places and trying to strong arm some other criminals into their protection racket. And these enemies plan on framing them. So we get a wild chase and a clever bait and switch that sees Batgirl and Black Canary, which this is the second time they have teamed up, get kidnapped. The Batgirl and Black Canary stuff is a lot of fun. We get a brief, kind of like a brief flashback of where Batgirl and Black Canary are incidentally doing a mission together, and then they end up together on this one as well. And we see Barbara's interactions with Canary is very different. Batman is not really someone who she looks up to. I think she respects Batman for what he does, but he is not a figure that she really values. She wants to value or does value Black Canary because she is a woman doing the same thing that she wants to do. And that desire to impress her pushes her to make some impulsive decisions. Some work out, some ends up getting them captured. You win some, you lose some. Uh, the whole kidnapping goes horrible, and Gordon ends up getting kidnapped along with them. They are able to save Gordon, and of course, the bugs get away, and the imposters end up getting killed, which then the papers write out that they are dead, and it just more and more leads to Lynn's being insane, with Moth being unsure, and at the end of number 7, we get what ends up being the start of my second favorite book. Batman is away, and Robin and Batgirl go on a mission together in issue 8. Uh, Robin ends up taking her on patrol with her second Bat cycle, and they take down first Condiment King. Not the Condiment King that I particularly like. This Condiment King doesn't have the like. I like the is it in the animated series? Yeah, it's the animated series where he has the two guns hooked up to the pack in the back. Like that's the Condiment King I like. This guy is literally like with his underwear over his pants and a tool belt with a bottle of ketchup in one hand and a bottle of like relish in the other. And he's talking about if you get the relish in the eye, it'll like hurt. And I know he's a goofy character, but I like him to be a little, just a tad more serious. They take him down, and they end up going into the subway to take down Blockbuster, who is a mammoth of a man with, some kind of psychosis issue, um, hurting people on a subway. And the whole comic is so much fun because of the interactions between Robin and Batgirl, where he is being a show off teenage boy, and she is a irritated teenage girl who's tired of taking orders. And she gets lucky stopping Blockbuster, but she does stop him. He does end up grabbing some of her red hair, which Gordon finds, and it leads him to believe that she is Batgirl, and he freaks out. But before they really get a chance to argue about it, he finds out that the GCPD is completely and totally on fire, as Lynn's and Cameron, which is Killer Moth's name, is setting the building ablaze. Barbara ends up, she does catch the bugs, and she does join the Bat family. At the very end, there is a nod to the Killing Joke, and she is able to get her dad off of her scent with Batman and Robin's help, which is probably the funniest moment in the book, as they have Robin cross-dressing as Batgirl. It's really funny. Uh, Out of all the comics that we read, and especially just thinking of the comics for the show, this has one of the more satisfying endings to it. It's an upbeat story for the most part, um, especially the Batgirl section. Not we don't get quite as dark as what we did with the Robin. I see everything that I want to see in it, and the ending is exactly what you want to see as well. Um, she catches her first two supervillains, even though they are B tier. She gets to join the Bat family after completing some more tests in the Batcave. We get a nod to the Killing Joke. There's a panel with the Joker, and Barbara's narration is, "This might be my future." A great little pull. And like I said, the ending with the funny switch and bait with Robin is awesome. Uh, this is, I mean, we're 30 minutes into this review, and I don't really like going this long on reviews. Um, but and I feel like I burnt through it and probably have not done this comic justice. But next week we will be sitting down with writer Scott Beatty, and we will be talking more about this comic. So hopefully we can do it a little better justice next week. As of right now, I can't think of any better justice to give it than tell you guys, if you have not read this comic, what are you doing? Until next time, guys, get out there and save the world, you bunch of heroes.